And that's because we don't know God. I want you to remember Louisa Steed. You remember the story? Louisa Steed. She came to America like 2,000 years ago. I'm kidding. And when she came, her husband, she could not find a job. Her husband found a job in Cincinnati, Ohio. And they worked 2 years hard because they were very poor. Immigrants coming from Europe, broke in the beginning of the century. They had nothing. And after 2 years, finally, they had the first vacation, 3 days, 1 weekend. And they went to Long Island, New York, anyway. As they went to the beach, her husband saw a child fighting the waves and drowning. And he jumped to save the child. And another wave hit him. And they both died. The child that he was trying to save and her husband. And she came back home with a 3-year-old girl alone in a new country without knowing English, without having an apartment. 2 weeks later, she was, evicted, thank you, from the apartment because she had no job. Her husband had a job, but he died, and she could not pay for the apartment. She was evicted, and she was in New York by now, and it was winter, and she had no clothing and no apartment, and a 3-year-old baby. What would you do? If you read her book, she said, I cannot afford to keep my eyes on the problems when I have such a wonderful God who has died for me. And she said, I will not allow myself to keep my eyes on the problems. I will turn my eyes and keep them on Jesus, because he is able to save, to deliver, and to help. And when he is with me, I have no fear. Isn't that nice? He went to the Central Park in New York, and she slept on the bench with her baby like that to warm the baby without food. And in all this time, she just prayed and listened carefully. This is what blows my mind. She did not even ask for help. She prayed praises prayer. She said, Lord, I don't have anything right now. But there are people in the Bible that lost everything, like Job. And he still praised you. Like Moses, like Joseph, like Daniel. And they still praised you. I will praise you as long as I live. You don't need to bless me in order to praise you. I trust you and I praise you anyway. Whatever I go through, I know that you know. And if you allow it, I will praise you for it. Rejoice, always, rejoice, always. You remember the verse? Philippians. How does it say? And again I say, shouldn't we? And there in the Central Park, on the bench, without food, without clothing, without an apartment, without anything, in cold, she wrote the song, "'Tis so sweet to trust in." She wrote that song. She didn't write the song after she had a job. She wrote the song when she had no clue what is going to happen tomorrow. She wrote the song not after the solution. She wrote the song before, when there was no hope, no light, nothing. And she started to sing the song. And she says, when I focus on God and I praise Him, I forget all my problems. And then she was singing, "'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus." Poor, frozen, no job, no house. If you were her, what would you do? As she sings, somebody extremely rich that everybody knows from American history, a big name, extremely rich, famous, one of the 3 richest people in that time, saw her singing, and he says to her, "You must be really well. You must be doing really well that you sing so nice." And she smiled and she said, "You don't sing when you do well. You sing when you know Jesus." He said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Well, I don't sing because I have. There are people who have and they don't sing. They are still stressed. I sing because I trust." Isn't that something? I don't sing because I have. I sing because I trust. And he said, "Tell me your story." I said, "Well, there is not much to tell. I don't have a story." He said, "Well, you do." She said, "Well, my husband died and I'm looking for a job, and I didn't find a job, so I'm here. And he says, what is your house? I don't have a house. Where do you sleep? On this bench. And you sing? He said, well, it's a matter of time until my Jesus works. And I rejoice just thinking that he will work. He says, I'm going to give you a job. He hired her to do some paperwork, and she did it so well. He said, you are amazing. You work like you fear God. And he said, all the time, if I see you or not, if somebody watches you or not, you still do a good job. I can trust you anytime. And she says, well, I want you to get it. I don't work for you. I work for Jesus. All I do it as I do it for God. You follow me? So he put her in a higher position, to the point that she got to handle all his business. Everything. All the railroads in the US, everything that happened with the railroads in the US, she was handling. He was just the name, but she was the one running everything. And he says, I trust her more than I trust self. He made that statement, I trust her more than I trust myself. And when she had so much, and she had a big salary and a big house, she said, this is not right. I cannot afford to live this life when Jesus didn't. Jesus is coming soon. This house is going to burn. Jesus didn't send me here to live this life. So she sold her house, took everything, took a vacation, went to Africa, built churches, built dorms for children, schools for children. After she spent everything, she came back, worked 6 months, took another month, went to Africa. She worked there, then came back. And she did that all her life. And she said, God didn't call me to live for me. He called me to live for others. And they asked her, don't you get tired? And she said, you don't get it because you don't know Jesus. That doesn't get me tired. That gets me refreshed. And she said, it's a greater blessing to give than to receive. She says, when I receive, I feel when I give, I am happy. And she says, when I wash their eyes, those children without shoes, when I wash their eyes, it makes me really happy. Folks, what has happened with our Christianity? We live in such a crooked world that it's got to influence us, and we are blind. We don't distinguish between truth and false, between joy and peace, between trust and anxiety. We need to get back to a strong relationship with God that clarifies the mind, that gives you a purpose and gives you a direction and gives you joy and gives you power. That's God's presence in you. We need that. That's what saves people. That's what it does. Basically, that's better than any evangelism. You do that, people are going to flock to your church. Do you follow me?